Folks, the Black Lives Matter movement has support not just here in the U.S., but over in Europe. And you've also seen the defacing of statues, including Winston Churchill statues in London. We want to talk to our friend Raheem Kassam, co-host of the War Room podcast, which you can all check out. He joins us now to talk about that and much more. Raheem, my friend, great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
So I just want to start with something because at the beginning of the show, I felt like I had to tell the audience what I think is really going on right now, which is that the Trump movement right now, I think, is losing. I think the momentum is against it, and I think that the president doesn't seem to have good advice, particularly on this law enforcement issue. What do you think about where Trump and his supporters, or rather Trump and his movement is right now?
Well, look, I mean, I'll get into what I think in just a second, but I want the audience to understand that while I understand a lot of people out there will be, satisfied with the president's performance over the course of the last 4 years, we're reaching a critical point here now where there is a major disconnect between what President Trump is sort of gesticulating about to the wider audience and what he's actually doing. And that distinction, that wedge is occurring because he is being pulled in two different directions by two different, and could be up to 10 different, as far as I'm concerned, sets of advisors who think that they have the magic wand they can wave ahead of the upcoming election. And one of those groups of advisors is more mainstream, establishment, Republican, maybe even moderate Democrat in its demeanor. Others will be more socially conservative driven. Others will be more driven towards what the president's agenda was supposed to be from the outset, delivering on MAGA, running on promises made, promises kept. So what we're seeing playing out here in Washington, D.C. right now is a power struggle into the summer, which will take us into the election. And I'm afraid as it stands at the moment, it looks like the critical components of what MAGA meant to so many people that voted for President Trump out there, building the wall, ending foreign wars, tackling China head on and bringing jobs home, all of these things have appeared to take a back seat. I'm not saying they're not being dealt with at all. I'm saying they appear to have taken a back seat to things that MAGA voices didn't really go for, which was the criminal justice reform, the new executive order on policing. And you might say that President Trump's been overtaken by events, but leaders should be leading. And at the moment, it looks like he is being led by some of these backroom advisors who I don't think have his entire best interest at heart. They might be very well motivated and well-meaning, but I don't think they know how to win an election. Now, luckily, we have Joe Biden as the opposite candidate. Imagine if we had somebody competent, but I'm not sure we should just rest on our laurels because bumbling Biden is the choice.
I think that they would vote for a rusty Pepsi can if it meant that Trump wasn't president. So, I mean, I agree that Biden is super weak, but it almost is irrelevant because it's just it's a non-Trump movement, right? And everyone knows that with Biden, you'd get all the same people that you would have gotten with Hillary in positions of power. You're going to have, the woke left is ascendant. They're going to dictate a lot of what his cabinet choices would be and what happens in the administrative and bureaucratic agencies. So huge concerns there. This executive order on policing, everyone I know who really understands law enforcement, who's done law enforcement, is seeing this and just saying, what is this supposed to? Why does Trump think that he gains with this? I mean, to your point about the advisors around him, and I have some thoughts on where this is coming from. This does nothing for him right now. And it does nothing for the country. It's not like he's taking an unpopular stand with his party that will save lives or that are showing leadership. This, to me, seems like trying to placate the mob a little bit. And I don't see any upside to it, Raheem.
Yeah, there are two ways to look at this. One is the idea that President Trump sort of allows the Chaz or the CHOP or Antifa stan or whatever you want to call it to fester and flourish over the course of, what Mayor Durkin called the summer of love there in Washington, and allow people to go into the election seeing what Democrat cities are like and what a Democrat country might look like. The other part of that, calculation is that actually, no, he owns this. This is happening under his watch. You have a pandemic that is now set to take the lives of over 150,000 Americans before the election, and he owns this. Now, I'm not going to be, so arrogant as to presume that I have the magic wand in all of this. I will allow that mentality to come from Jared Kushner or whoever else is offering the president all this sorts of advice. But what I am doing here is trying to analyze the situation and trying to make sense of what the president himself might be thinking, and then where the ideas externally might be coming from. And right now, it does look like the president is, as you say, bowing to the mob a little bit in order, there wasn't really anything of great substance in this executive order, by the way, a little bit here, a little bit there, and digging into police. And I'm sure you have people who have worked in the police forces who know more about this than I do. But just sort of a little chip away here and there. For what? Are these people ever going to vote for President Trump? Do you think anybody who's marching down Pennsylvania Avenue with the Black Lives Matter placard is going to end up voting for President Trump? I think that's a nonsense. I think tweeting law and order out to placate the base is going to reach a point of exhaustion for him. And I think he has to figure something very quickly out, because remember, we were promised an Antifa designation as a terrorist group. Then we had Ken Cuccinelli coming out and saying, "Oh, it's not an international organization at all." Wrong. I mean, ignorantly wrong. And the president still hasn't carried that through, which for his base is really important, because ordinary conservatives are not just silenced and censored by social media companies. They are attacked, they are disparaged, they are heckled, they are thrown things out, they are punched, they are kicked, they are chased out of restaurants, and yet no action on that.
We're speaking to our friend Raheem Kassam. He's co-host of the War Room podcast, which he does with Steve Bannon and Steve Miller. And or Jason Miller. Sorry, Steve Miller is a great band. Jason Miller is the co-host of War Room with him. Is a good guy. So, Raheem, now I want you to just try to explain to folks, because you've been doing great coverage of this. I've been seeing all your stuff on Twitter. There are huge protests. I mean, they look like the anti-war protests against the Iraq War in Europe back in like 2002, right, or 2003. There are huge protests in Europe right now where there are people that are doing this Black Lives Matter similar rhetoric. They're, I guess, under the umbrella of the Black Lives Matter movement in some way, but they're defacing Churchill statues. Just tell us what's going on, across the Atlantic on this one, because I think to a lot of people, how is police conduct in Minneapolis by one cop in a Democrat-controlled city with a Democrat police chief, by the way, how is that something that gets tens of thousands of Brits, of Dutch, of, I think, the French? I mean, I've seen the Amsterdam and British stuff. What's going on?
Well, in fact, right behind me here is a book I wrote in 2018 called Enoch Was Right, and it was about a member of Parliament called Enoch Powell, who in 1968, 50 years before I wrote the book, or I read the book 50 years after he gave the speech, he talked about in no uncertain terms, the immigration problem that Britain would face as a result of the lack of assimilation and integration that was pushed. What he called the lobby, the race relations lobby, that really started off as one or two think tanks that turned into a multi-billion-pound-a-year lobby group, and everything that and the book's called Enoch Was Right, because everything that Enoch said would come to fruition in the United Kingdom as a result of mass migration has come to fruition, and we're seeing that now. Look, most of these protesters outside Parliament, whether it's in Parliament Square, whether it's on the Mall, whether it's all over the country trying to pull down different statues, they wouldn't be able to pick Minneapolis out on a map. They certainly wouldn't be able to pick out a picture of George Floyd. We saw one of them going on TV just a few days ago and saying that she had never met Winston Churchill, so it wasn't for her to decide whether he was a racist or not. Doesn't even know who Sir Winston Churchill is, and we've now got a failed member of Parliament now who was actually kicked out of the House of Commons after being charged with criminal activity, who's now saying that Cocoa Pops, the cereal, is racist because they are brown and it has a picture of a monkey on the front. These people are race grifters. They have been doing this for decades now, and one of the things your audience should really know is that the Black Lives Matter UK organization isn't actually a community-led grassroots organization. It's actually a wholly owned subsidiary of a political party in the United Kingdom, which is called the Socialist Worker Party. Now, the Socialist Worker Party, Buck, you're right to identify, are the people who organized the big marches, regular marches, whether it's about race, whether it's about war, whether it's about policing, whether it's about jails, whether it's about immigration, all of these hard left-wing communist positions the Socialist Worker Party take. They are often seen on Press TV, the Iranian news outlet. They're often seen on Russia Today, the Russian state media outlet. And these are the people who are driving this. And it comes down to this one organization that I've identified in the UK called the Stop Trump Coalition Limited. That's right, these great anti-capitalists have a private limited company that they run their far left-wing activities through, and it's called the Stop Trump UK Coalition. Now, what, again, left-wing politicos in the United Kingdom are doing running a Trump coalition, that's a big enough question mark over it. What I want to see from the American government is to say to the British government, well, we know for a fact, and if they need help, I'm here for them, I can hold their hand along the way. We know that the British government has given grants and subsidies to a lot of these left-wing activist groups that masquerade as think tanks and academic researchers and so on and so forth. And that money is now being plowed into campaigning against a president of the United States ahead of an election. If that's not foreign collusion, then I don't know what is. And I just dread that we're not going to get our heads around these facts before the election itself.
Raheem, what was there was a protest. I saw this in London. There were anarchists destroying statues and being violent in London. And then there were counter protesters who showed up. And from what I could see, all of a sudden, when the counter protesters show up, then the streets are flooded with police who are very active and very vigilant all of a sudden. What has been the reality there? And we know, is the mayor still Sadiq Khan?
Yeah, the mayor is still Sadiq Khan. His term is actually over, but because of the pandemic, we've been unable to hold an election in London. Now, I would argue, and for the nerds who are watching, I would argue that the mayoralty of London is actually an unconstitutional position in the United Kingdom. The whole thing, the institution should be scrapped. Margaret Thatcher actually did that to the Greater London Authority in the 80s, and then Tony Blair brought it back in the late 90s in order that somebody like Sadiq Khan could take the billions of budget London has and use it to campaign against the government. And of course, people will know that Britain has traditionally had conservative governments. So this is one of their clubs that they like to beat us with, which is gathering all the sort of liberal metropolitan elitists in London who vote for left-wing things and giving the mayor the budget by which to fight against the national government. We should be getting rid of that. But to your point about the protesters and the counter-protesters, I've personally led marches of 20,000 people down Whitehall right outside 10 Downing Street, and the police were completely absent when it was the left protesting, when it was Antifa protesting. The police across the United Kingdom have been absent when hundreds and thousands of young girls have been systematically groomed and raped by predominantly Pakistani Muslim men all around the country. Police completely absent. And we've had years and years of investigations into that, and the government still hasn't concluded and released the report. But when I marched 20,000 people down Whitehall, you've got the full police in the riot gear ready to crack heads. And of course, crack heads they did. There are a number of scuffles this weekend between the patriotic protesters. And yes, as always, there are going to be some bad eggs in that crowd as well. Some people just go looking for a fight. I don't even really need to say it at the moment, but it's nothing compared to the BLM Socialist Worker Party and Antifa crowd, who have 95% bad eggs in their ranks and are smashing statues up. This is the Britain that we have been bequeathed by Boris Johnson, by Sadiq Khan, and the whole neoliberal set, who have no interest in keeping British tradition alive, who have no interest in keeping peace and police on British streets, and who have no interest in seeing down the multiculturalist race relations lobby. And it is a lobby and it is an industry that needs to be eradicated.
Raheem Kassam, everybody. War Room is the podcast. You can check out, listen to him there. Also, follow Raheem on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook. He does great work. And Raheem, please save freedom in Europe and America, okay? We got a job for you.
Got two hands.
Thanks, my friend. Take care.
I see poor technique, and that matters in this analysis. If you can't do your job using minimal force, you wind up using more and more force. Hence, two officers not being able to control in a struggle that anybody who's had any measure of fight training sees, they don't know what they're doing on the ground with this man. They don't. I'm sorry. No disrespect to police. I have high regard for how many of you do the job, men and women. This is not good technique. They then use the taser because they could not control him. He then gets the taser, and then what you see here ensues. He gets away from two officers because they don't know how to restrain him.
What the heck is Fredo Cuomo talking about here? I mean, yeah, obviously this guy was able to wrestle a weapon out of the hands of the law enforcement guys. It's nighttime. It's a situation where these cops, they're not idiots. They know what's been going on across the country. You know, they know the moment that this gets violent, oh, my God, if we actually have to do something here, they're terrified because they know that if something like this happens, and it did happen, then they're not going to get the benefit of the doubt at this moment. No, that's for sure. What's Bro Cuomo suggesting? Everyone's going to be, an MMA specialist all of a sudden? I got a question for Smarty Pants Cuomo. What do you think about female law enforcement officers, Cuomo? Because believe it or not, and I know that this is, oh my gosh, size and weight matter a whole lot when you're trying to restrain someone just with your hands. Women are overwhelmingly smaller and lighter than men. So should we have female cops? Well, of course we should have female cops. But guess what? Female cops are going to have to use things like nightsticks or batons and tasers because these things matter. But, you're never going to hear him say that. Never going to hear him say that. He's just going to say that these officers didn't have good technique. It's really just a way of being like, yeah, check out my guns. I work out a lot, and I did MMA training. He's a 50-year-old man who's getting paid millions of dollars to spew propagandistic BS on TV. Yeah, he's going to go teach everybody? Hey, do you even lift, bro? Thanks, Cuomo. Leave the thought process to other people here. Let the analysis go to those who understand what it is to actually be there, who have carried a weapon in the course of their duty, which Cuomo has never done, who have put themselves at risk in the course of their job that they will use force if necessary. Cuomo's never done this. Well, training. Oh, my gosh. All of a sudden, we got these media guys that are all karate experts. But, easier to do that, to pick on that, than to say, yeah, get tasered. It's your fault you're going to get tasered. That's what Cuomo's telling these officers. So since it's your fault because you weren't good enough at grappling, remember, no chokeholds. So that's a no-no now. So if someone's stronger than... So do all cops have to be... Are we going to have rigorous physical standards? All cops have to be, in the 90th percentile of strength and fitness, and you're not going to have a lot of cops. I just want to know what's the real answer here. Oh, that's right. The real answer is just blame the cops. No disrespect. No, he's disrespecting them, but he's a jackass.
It's time for roll call.
Roll call, everybody. Facebook.com/Buck Sexton. If you want to send a Facebook message, teambuck@iheartmedia.com. If you want to send us an email. And Producer Mark, what is the phone number for the Producer Mark's penalty box?
That's what we're calling it now?
Yeah.
Okay, it's 800... I don't know, you know it by now?
844-900-2825.
Yeah, that's what it is.
900-2825.
I have to look it up every time.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, there we go. So if you want to call in, that's the number, folks. 844-900-BUCK. Pretty easy to remember. Leave a voicemail. You can get Producer Mark. We'll put you on Friday, and we've really enjoyed that. It's fun to hear your voices, so please do call in, and we'll get to it. We'll do a whole segment of just voicemails Friday, so we'll get a lot of voicemails in. Joe, Buck, and Producer Mark, you shouldn't move to any red state. Every conservative that lives in a hopelessly blue state like yours and has the means to do so needs to move to purple states and turn them more solidly red. We may have to give up on the blue states in the short run, even when we may have generations of ties in order to save the nation in the long run. So Florida is a good choice for you, as it is wavering in very important Shields High. Another vote for Florida. Producer Mark.
I'll put it up on the
another
leaderboard.
one.
Wow, you made a pop culture reference from this
Look at
decade.
that.
Wow.
Another one. I know things. I know things about stuff. So, yeah. Was that DJ Khaled? Is that right?
DJ Khaled, Grandpa.
Khaled. Yeah. All righty. Jim. Oh, yeah. No, Florida's great, Joe, and we'll see what happens. If New York continues to be turned into an unlivable hellhole, then obviously Florida sounds like it's beckoning. Jim, hey, look. I mean, look. You know who the original guy was here. The one and only Mr. Rush Limbaugh. He moved down to Florida. What was it now? A decade ago, at least, maybe more.
I think we'd be happy to follow in his footsteps. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. He moved down to Florida, and I think it's been at least 10 years. So, and he's been very happy down there. So I'm just saying, Jim, hey, Buck and Mark, I'm in Michigan. Just had a thought listening to your Thursday show. For 3+ years now, we were told that you can't withhold federal funds to sanctuary cities for not complying with federal law. Now Biden is saying he would withhold funds to police departments that don't sign on to federal reforms, but I thought it was unconstitutional to do that. Good point, Jim. On a side note, I work in healthcare, which is full of hardcore libs, and Governor Whitmer's lockdown has brought some of my coworkers away from the dark side, people I never thought would convert. When they asked me for recommendations on who to listen to, I obviously pointed them to you. 2 more of them have now stepped inside the Freedom Hut on a daily basis. Keep up the great work, my fellow patriot. Our country needs you now more than ever. Well, Jim, thank you so much for passing the buck. Nothing makes me happier to hear, really, than that. And everyone listening, the more you can do that, that's how this show grows. I don't have some advertising budget. You're not going to see, the Buck Sexton show in commercials on Fox News or banners in your local, what do you call those things? When you drive on the highway, what are those? Billboards. You're not going to see Buck Sexton's face on big billboards or anything like that. So this show, and it continues to grow because all of you tell people about it. And I think once they give this show a shot, if they care about politics and conservative content and ideology, and just want a really good podcast or a really good radio show to listen to, I think we match up against anybody. I think that there's Rush, and then I think other than that, it's really up to who you think is the best, and you know who I think is the best after Rush. So, there you go. Todd. Oh, and as for Michigan, Jim, yeah, I mean, Whitmer, the petty tyranny and dishonesty that was at the heart of so many of those decisions that she made, and the fact that her own family was looking to kind of get around it and violate it. I mean, that's classic lib stuff. Ruin you, do things that make your life harder and more challenging and more difficult, and then make sure that you're not subjected to that, though, right? I mean, meaning that they ruin other people's stuff, but their stuff is to be protected. Their rights are sacrosanct. Hypocrisy is the foundation upon which the left is built. And they have to be hypocrites because no one really will be able to adhere to the standards they pretend they adhere to. It's never going to happen. Todd, Buck, podcast listener here. Well, thank you, Todd. On Wednesday's show, you asked why conservatives aren't counter-protesting. The answer is simple. We aren't crazy, and the current commie protesters are. While I'm passionate about liberty and freedom, I'm not yet willing to lay down my life and also risk the safety and security of my wife and kids, however that time may come. For now, Texas is holding strong, but it makes me sick to my stomach to see what's going on in other places in my beloved country. Todd, my friend, I'm not clear on whether your concern is really about COVID or you mean just that protesting would put you at risk for other reasons? Because I think if you're really that worried about, I don't think you should be that concerned about COVID right now. If you're protesting outside, unless you have an immune condition I'm not aware of, or if you're over 70, I don't think that you should be that concerned about being outside and protesting. That said, to each his own, and you've got to be your own risk assessor. And look, I've been telling you guys for a long time that I go out, I live my life as much as I can, even under these current restrictions. And there may come a time when I'm in here and I'm like, guys, I'm really sick. I'm in bad shape. I've got COVID-19. And I understand that. I understand that. So don't think that if I end up getting COVID at some point in the future and I'm really sick and can't do the show for a few days or whatever the case may be, that then I'll feel like, oh, no, whatever. No, I'm accepting that there is risk to my actions. I understand that. I'm trying to be smart about it, but I'm also living my life instead of cowering in fear and hiding under the bed all the time. So that's just my approach. That's how I'm doing things. Daniel, hey team, I hear all the warnings from everybody about moving to Austin, but I'm surprised no one has mentioned this. Alex Jones currently lives in the Austin area. Sure is a beautiful city with a lot to do, but if you move to Austin, you're taking the risk of becoming Alex Jones's neighbor, and you know how that could turn out.
All right, Daniel, let's understand something right now, okay? If Buck Sexton moves to Austin, Texas, I mean, there's going to have to be a steel cage match between Alex Jones and Buck Sexton. No question about it. I mean, we're going to have to go mano a mano, shirtless, see what happens. Get into a fight, you know what I mean? I mean, it's going to be me versus Alex Jones, throwing down, maybe put some money on it for charity, I don't even know. You know, it's part of an Illuminati plot, that's for sure. Buck Sexton moving to Texas. I've had enough. I don't think I could handle it. That poofy haired New York City guy.
Imbecile.
I can't take it.
What was it?
Imbecile?
Yeah, no, I mean, thanks, producer Mark. Appreciate it. You helping Team Alex Jones out.
I just felt it would work.
No. I was trying to go for something a little more like, that Yankee. Something like that.
Oh, okay.
You know?
Can we finally put the final nail in the coffin of Austin now? I think that should do it.
We love Austin, and we love our KLBJ listeners. I'm going down to hang out with them and visit them. But yes, as a place to move,
okay,
we're getting a lot of pushback. I think they're painting Black Lives Matter on the streets there now too. I just saw that today.
Listen, I don't want Austin to hate me. I'm sure it's a lovely town, great place. I'm happy to visit it. I just don't think we should move there. Alex Jones is going to hunt us.
We're bringing freedom down to them.
That's right, Buck Sexton. I'm going after him. I'm sending my crazy listeners after him right now. It's gonna be nuts. I will eat my neighbor Buck Sexton. I'll eat him. I got no shame about that.
So yeah, I mean, I guess if I ended up being his neighbor, he's already said that he would eat his neighbor. So that means that if I did move to the Austin area, there is a not zero chance that I could be eaten by Alex Jones. Just saying, it's possible. He said he'd eat his neighbor, folks. Jason, which was one of the funniest things I've heard in a long time. Jason, hello, team from Minnesota. I've been listening to Buck since the birth of my first son back in 2012. I used to catch your Saturday podcast during his naps. Very fond memories. Not exactly sure when you first went on air, those Saturday podcasts, but after May of 2012, I've been hooked. I've been listening to you from your very early days, and I've always appreciated your point of view on various political topics. Know, sir, that you are not alone and that your position is shared by a large majority of fellow Americans. Well, thank you so much. I live 40 minutes away from Minneapolis, and the last few weeks have been an up and down roller coaster of emotions for me. It pained me to watch the George Floyd video, and it pained me just as much to watch the cities that I love burn. The cities I love burn, yeah. Right now, it is crazy in this country, and I'm praying for the good guys to win. Please keep up the good work and don't stop. This country needs a platform like this to voice our beliefs. Shields high from a fellow graybeard millennial. Well, look, we really appreciate, Jason, that you've written in with this, and we're going to keep doing what we do. But it's tough. I've been speaking to friends of mine who even run some conservative media platforms, and they're all worried, too. I mean, it just feels like, we go digital, then the social media platforms clamp down on us. We create our own platforms on the web, create your own URL, and then PayPal or one of the payment processors comes after you. You create a pirate ship that the left can't easily just have canceled or taken down. They go after any business relationships you had and any sponsors. Notice that they do this and they keep doing it. And our response is just to hope that we don't get eaten by the crocodile, so to speak. Our response is to sit around and pray that things get better. They're not getting better. They're getting worse. They're getting worse. And I'm going to say this to you. I'm a capitalist. Every sponsor that I have on this show is a company that I know and work with and trust. And you are voting to keep us on the air every time you use one of our promo codes or go to one of the sponsors. I mean, I want to be very upfront about that. When I do a read for whether it's Oxford Gold Group or I do a read for for any of our sponsors that you're hearing day in and day out. And I was going to start naming them all, but then I realized I'm doing a commercial for all of our sponsors. And when I do these reads, understand, done for you real estate. When you just go check out those companies, even if you're not going to, even if you don't necessarily make that decision to buy or to sign up or whatever it may be, you're at least showing our sponsors that there's support from Team Buck, and that means that they can keep supporting this show. So I always want to be very explicit about that. When I'm telling you guys, hey, if you can, and look, I know times are tough right now for a lot of people economically and all that, but first of all, a lot of what we tell you about is going to save you money. That's a big part. A lot of the sponsors we have are going to save you money based on what you have right now, or save you from a lot of downside. But that's the way. People ask me, well, how can we help? Pass the buck, and if you can, please use our sponsors. Please actually go when you hear those commercials during the show. Go, and that's the way to get the kind of support that we can keep rolling with. Right, Producer Mark? We're capitalists. Isn't that fun that we get to be open about this?
Absolutely. We love all of our sponsors.
We love our sponsors, and all of you going to them is what keeps us on the air. Otherwise, Producer Mark and I are going to have to start a hot dog stand, and he's going to be a tyrant because, he's going to run the hot dog stand, and I'm going to be the guy cooking, and I'm going to put too much sauerkraut on, and he has a very specific sense of how those dogs should be dressed.
Yes, ketchup.
Ketchup. That's the move. I'm glad that you said ketchup instead of mustard, because for me, mustard is fancy. Mustard is what you put on your Polish sausage, on your bratwurst, your more advanced deli meats. I think if you're going for a classic stadium situation, you got to go with the ketchup.
Of course. And if you're at a kosher deli, you get the spicy red onions.
I'm with you. Oof, man, I'm getting hungry just talking about this. Anthony writes, hey, Buck, Chaz Chop no longer call them autonomous. Someone probably told them, or they figured out that if not part of the United States, they can't vote for president. LOL, shields high. LOL indeed, Anthony. Thank you for writing in. I appreciate it, man. Good to have you as part of the team. Lance, good afternoon, Buck. Good afternoon, Lance. I'm a loyal listener and fan. You and producer Mark fill much of my Sunday as I save your podcast. Dude, Braveheart was indeed a great film, but I've yet to hear you mention Once Upon a Time in America. Martin Scorsese's masterpiece work, in my humble opinion, shields high. Lance, I saw Once Upon a Time in America in a high school film class. I saw it once. Producer Mark, producer Nick, is this a truly great film?
I have not seen it.
Okay. Well, I don't know if producer Nick has seen it, but we'll have to see. I don't know. Maybe I'll go back and rewatch it. It's been I can't even weigh in, Lance, on because I don't remember it. I did watch Amadeus, as I told you over the weekend, and I introduced the Snow Princess to So I Married an Axe Murderer, which is like a very watchable 90s, it's like eating some M&Ms or something. It's not amazing, but it always kind of gets the job done. Except for peanut butter M&Ms, which are amazing, if we're going to be fair about this. Thomas, Buck, I've listened to the reports, discussions, and seen the videos of the shooting last Friday night of Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta. The procedures used by the cops was proper right up until the scuffle started and the fight commenced in the efforts by these two police officers to take him prisoner. At the point where Brooks broke free and started running away from the scene is where everything was done wrong. I had to ask who trained these cops. They failed to use the equipment they had at hand and started chasing him. Why? It's stupid actions like that destroy in 5 minutes years of public trust and cooperation that good cops worked for decades to establish. Shields high. Well, Thomas, if someone has resisted arrest and runs away, the cops do chase. They're supposed to chase, because otherwise everyone would try to resist arrest, because if you get 10 steps away from the cops, you're free. All right? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So I'm not really clear on what you're saying in that point. Look, the big debate is over whether when someone is running from you and points a stun gun at you as they're trying to get away, to use lethal force to defend yourself. And to that, I would just say, it's a tough call, but I think the officer doesn't have to subject himself to getting tasered and possibly having his weapon taken from him and being killed with it. So But, Thomas, I appreciate you writing in, and thank you very much for sharing your point of view on this. Team, that's going to be the show for today. An honor and a privilege, as always, to be with you. Please pass the buck. Check out bucksexton.com. Until tomorrow.